Let's tackle Sukkot. You know, the Jewish holidays are not isolated events. They come in sets, if you will. And we really have two sets of holidays. We have the Shalosh Regalim, and we have the Yom Noraim. The Shalosh Regalim are Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. The Yom Noraim are Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. But we all intuit that Sukkot is also connected to the Yom Noraim. In other words, it isn't simply that Sukkot is connected to Shavuos and Pesach that come before it in that cycle, but it's also somehow connected to Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah before it, which comes out that Sukkot really is the juncture, or the intersection of two different series of holidays. We have the Shalosh Regalim, which culminate with Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, and we have the Yom Noraim, which culminate with Sukkot, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. So Sukkot really is like a crossroads. It's where everything kind of comes together. And I'd like to explore that a little bit. The Maharal points out that the Torah makes a point of the fact that the Shalosh Regalim correspond to the different stages of the agricultural cycle. So Pesach, of course, is the Aviv, is the time of the sprouting of the grain. And Shavuos is the time of the Kotzir, time of the harvest. And the way agriculture worked in Eretz Yisrael in those days, the grain was left in the field to dry the entire summer, and was gathered in for storage at the end of the summer. So Sukkot, which is really at the end of the summer, is the Asif, it's the ingathering. So you have Aviv, sprouting, which is Pesach, Kotzir, harvest, which is Shavuos, and Asif, the ingathering, which is Sukkot. Now we know the Shalosh Regalim also correspond to events in Jewish history. Pesach, of course, corresponds to the TCS Mitzrayim, the Exodus from Egypt, and Shavuos to the giving of the Torah. And Sukkot corresponds to our being enveloped in the Anani Kabbalah, the clouds of glory, which protected us, sheltered us during the 40 years in the Midbar. Now the Maharal explains that the stages in the agricultural cycle also correspond to these stages of Jewish history. And if you think of Aviv, sprouting, the sprouting of the grain, of course that's wheat, barley, etc. But think of the sprouting of the Jewish nation. What was our Aviv? What was our sprouting as a nation? It was the Exodus from Egypt. That's our beginning. That's the first time you really can speak of a Jewish people. You know, the Medrash compares the TCS Mitzrayim to a birth. It says in the pasuk, "O Hanisa Elokim Lavo Lokachas Logai Mikerav Gai." Did God ever, on any other occasion, take a nation out from within another nation? So the expression nation from within a nation, and that relates to the cow who is delivering the calf. And whoever is attending to the cow, whether it's the owner of the cow or the veterinarian, sometimes will actually insert his arms into the body of the mother to withdraw the calf. If you ever read any of the stories of James Herriot, doesn't ring a bell, English veterinarian, it seems every one of his stories begins with his delivering a calf.
Or a horse.
Or a horse. Anyway, but actually, and he describes this process, actually putting his hand into the body of the mother to withdraw the young animal. So the Torah says that when God took us out of Mitzrayim, it was like a birth. It was our birth. So the sprouting of the grain, birth, this all relates to the TCS Mitzrayim. So the agricultural cycle has its parallel. Nisan is the month of sprouting. It's also the month of the sprouting of our nation. Now, the immediate objective of the sprouting, what you're working toward, is, of course, the harvest. And when we were taken out of Mitzrayim, what was the immediate objective? The rendezvous at Har Sinai, where we were going to receive the Torah. And this is really what HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu at the burning bush. He said that when I take you out, you will serve God at this mountain. But that's what God told Moshe Rabbeinu, that the immediate consequence of the TCS Mitzrayim will be that you'll come to Har Sinai to receive the Torah. So in the same way that the harvest is the immediate consequence of the sprouting, so that which took place on Shavuos was the immediate consequence of the TCS Mitzrayim, the receiving of the Torah. But we have to know that even though the harvest is the immediate objective of the Yetzias Mitzrayim, or of the sprouting, it isn't the ultimate objective. We don't plant grain and have it sprout simply to harvest it and then do nothing with it. The ultimate objective is we bring it into our houses and it provides us with nourishment for the entire year. So what is the ultimate objective of receiving the Torah? Is to have a relationship with God. That's what the Anani Kavod is all about. The idea of being enveloped in the Anani Kavod is the connection, the relationship with God. Let me show you an amazing thing. You may know that the halacha is that a sukkah does not have to have 4 walls. The sukkah could have 2 walls, 2 perpendicular walls, and a little bit, a tefach, which forms the 3rd wall, a handbreadth forms the 3rd wall. Now, where do you put the handbreadth? That little piece of wall, where do you put it? So the Gemara has a discussion of this in Maseches Sukkah, and it says you put it keneged hayotze, you put it adjacent to one of the 2 walls. Let's say, for example, in your mind's eye, imagine you have a wall on the north and you have a wall on the east. So you have a resh, the letter resh, a line on the top, which is north, and on the right side, which is east. So you can put it either at the northwest corner or at the southeast corner. And that's how you do it. As you have the 2 full-size walls, and that little bit is attached. So you ask the question, why don't you put it in the diagonally opposite corner, or in the southwest corner?
Standing by itself.
Standing by itself, and it looks more of an enclosure, because it really, because you have something that closes off the other 2 sides, albeit a small piece. So the Gemara says this question was asked to the sage Rav, and Shasik Rav. Rav was silent. Rav didn't give an answer. So the question is, what does it mean he didn't give an answer? He didn't have an answer? So I once saw in a Sefer, it says, brings from the Ramami Pano, one of the great Mukubalim, who says that whenever the Gemara has this expression, and it has it several times, that Rav was asked a question on Shasik Rav, doesn't mean he didn't have an answer. And the answer was rooted in Kabbalah, and therefore Rav didn't want to speak it out, because in those days there was a great reticence to convey mystical ideals to the public. So therefore anything which touched on mysticism, on Kabbalah, Rav kept silent. But of course nowadays we are more open with mystical ideas, the Arizal and the Chasidus began to spread concepts of Kabbalah. So this Sefer says that we can actually give the answer. It's a very simple answer. The walls of the Sukkah symbolize God's embracing us. God's embracing us. Now if you think about your arm, right? Your arm has 2 main parts. There's the part between the shoulder and the elbow. The second part is between the elbow and the wrist. And then you have this little piece, which is called the hand, which is attached. Now if you bend your arm and wrist in the right way, you have 2 full walls, and you have the extra tefach, literally a handbreadth attached to the end. Now if you want to embrace someone, you'll realize that the upper part of your arm will be around that person's side, the lower part of your arm will be around that person's back, and the hand can come around. So this symbolizes an embrace. That's the sukkah. The sukkah is God's embrace of us. So of course, the hand has to be attached to the rest of the arm. It makes perfect sense. That the extra tefach is attached to the two perpendicular walls, just like your hand is attached to your two segments of your arm. The argument to put it in the opposite corner, it makes perfect sense if you're talking about technical halachic enclosures. You want to enclose the space. What looks more like an enclosure of space? Yeah, you put it in the opposite corner, it looks like you've enclosed all four sides. But if you're thinking of this being God's arm, then really what you want to do is you want to have it attached. You want your hand attached to the rest of your arm. Now this is already something which is, I wouldn't call it mystical, but it's already something which relates to Tamei HaMitzvahs. If a rabbi didn't want to discuss it, so Shasik Rab, but this really is the answer to the question. Sukkot is the ultimate objective. The ultimate objective of having a Torah is to live a life which enables, which brings about that relationship with God, God's embrace. By the way, I'll just mention that there is a medrash which says in the pasuk in Shir Hashirim, Smolo tachas roshi v'yamino tchapkeni, that his left hand is behind my head and his right arm embraces me. The medrash says that Smolo tachas roshi, the left hand is a reference to Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and the right hand embracing is a reference to Sukkot. So the idea is not far-fetched. Chazal already allude to this idea. But that's the ultimate objective. So in the same way that the ultimate objective of the Chatzir, of the harvest, is the Asif, is the ingathering, so the ultimate objective of receiving the Torah and Shavuos is to come to that relationship which is Sukkot.
One could jump ahead and say that the ultimate objective was the ingathering, the true ingathering of exiles, not just...
Well, we're going to talk about this in a second.
Oh.
No, but David is 100% right, that ultimately, the ultimate objective is not that which occurred in the Midbar. It's not that, yes, in the Midbar we received the Torah and then the Shechina came and rested upon the Mishkan and all that. The ultimate objective, of course, will be in the Messianic age. Correct? Which is when history comes to a successful conclusion. And interestingly enough, there are observances that relate to Sukkot, which are very much a taste of the Messianic age. I'll share one with you. When the Beis HaMikdash stood, there were karbonos that were brought every day. Of course, every day there's a carbon musaf on Yom Tov. And on Sukkot, the carbon musaf featured a number of parim, a number of oxen that were brought as sacrifices, actually 70. So on the first day there were 13, the second day there were 12. It went down a number, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. On the seventh day there were 7. But if you add those numbers together, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, and 7, altogether adds up to 70. Now the Gemara in Sukkah and Daf Nun Hey says a very surprising thing. It says that these 70 correspond to the 70 nations. If you go back to Parshas Noach, we find that Noah's 3 sons had 70 offspring, which are the fathers, so to speak, of 70 nations. Those are the divisions of all humanity. So these karbonos correspond to the 70 nations. But here we have a contradiction in Chazal, a seeming contradiction as to the significance of this fact. The Gemara there, on the Nun Hay, says that the purpose of this was to atone for the 70 nations. This was for the benefit of the 70 nations. And Rabbi Yochanan, the Gemara says, woe unto the nations. When the Beis HaMikdash stood, there were karbanos that were brought on their behalf. And now that there's no Beis HaMikdash, where is the atonement going to be for the 70 nations? That's what the Gemara says. So the Gemara seems to say that this is really something which is for the benefit of the nations of the world. Yet, the Medrash says something else, and this is well known, commenting on the fact that the numbers go down, which is usually something we wouldn't expect. We would expect always Mailim B'Kodesh, and that as of holiness we ascend, we go up. Here the numbers go down, 13, 12, 11, 10. So how do you account for that? So the Medrash says, because we're talking about the nations of the world will be annihilated in the Messianic age. So there's a process of their reduction from 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, until they're kaput.
The Medrash says the nations will be destroyed?
The Medrash says that it corresponds to the nations which are kolim.
But not all the people, just add national groups.
So let's understand this. So at first glance, it seems to be contradictory. Rashi, in his commentary, in one breath, puts the two traditions together. He mentions the Gemara and he mentions this Medrash literally without a space. In one single Rashi puts the two concepts together. So how do we understand that? Well, the simple explanation is this. When we talk about the reduction of the nations, we're not talking about the reduction of the population of the nations, their numbers. We're talking about the reduction of their foreign ideologies. In other words, these nations are antagonistic to Kedusha, to holiness, to truth, etc. So they're, forgive me for using this word, I just don't have a better English word for it, their goyishkeit, so to speak, that which makes them foreign, that which makes them unacceptable, will be diminished.
Nationalism.
Well, nationalism is not really the point I want to make.
The
point I want to make is that the foreign ideologies, the alien ideologies, that which makes them, in a sense, abhorrent, that will be reduced. But really, it's a process of purification. It's a process of refinement that will take place. So it's true, because we are bringing the karbanos for them, and the result of bringing these karbanos is that that which makes them alien will be diminished, and they'll come on board. Now, let's remind ourselves on Rosh Hashanah, this is what we prayed for, right? That God should place His fear on all creation and all mankind should. They should make one band to serve Him b'leiv shalom. Well, that's really what Sukkot is all about. But let's remind ourselves. It's an amazing, amazing thing. When God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, there's a little preamble, if you will. God speaks to the Jewish people. He transmits a message. It's on the second day of Sivan. And He tells Moshe Rabbeinu to pass on this message. A very short number of verses. But one of the messages is, Vatem tiyu li, you shall be for me, mamleches kohanim, a kingdom of priests, l'goy kadosh, and a holy nation. So what does this mean, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation? So there are many interpretations, but there is a commentary from the son of the Rambam, Rabbi Avraham ben Oshel Rambam, and he brings from his father, from the Rambam, that his father used to interpret the verse this way. What is a kohen? What is a priest? A priest is a intermediary. Right? When we go to the Beis Hamikdash to bring a carbon, we wouldn't perform the ritual ourselves. We'd have a priest do it on our behalf. So the priest is a functionary between me and God. The Jewish people are priests. The nation is a nation of priests. We are the intermediaries between God and all the nations of the world. That's part of our job. Part of our job is to bring all mankind to the truth, to morality, to emes, theological correctness. This is the job of the Jewish people. In that sense, the entire Jewish people are priests. Within the Jewish people, we have Kehanim too. But all of Klal Yisrael function as Kehanim vis-a-vis the nations of the world. Now, we don't work actively on this. And whether there ever was a time that we engaged in proselytizing is an interesting historical question, but certainly we don't do it today. But the Svarim HaKadoshim tell us that if Klal Yisrael would live in accordance with its ideals, it wouldn't be necessary to proselytize. I mean, I'll give you a much, I've given it before. Various countries are experimenting with their healthcare systems. Canada has government-provided healthcare. The United States is trying to avoid that, or at least some parties are trying to avoid that. And they're working with a different type of system, and so on and so forth. Each system has advantages and disadvantages. Expense and convenience, and are you able to deliver what people need. Let's say there was a state somewhere in the world that had developed a healthcare system that was efficient, economical, People were healthy. People were living beyond standard life expectancy. And there were no drawbacks. It just worked perfectly. And it didn't cost too much money. So you could be sure that they wouldn't have to proselytize. They wouldn't have to take out full-page ads in the New York Times telling people, oh, why don't you try what we're doing? As soon as the word would get out, people would be, rushing to see what are they doing. Let's transplant it and install it in our countries, right? The same thing, if Klal Yisrael would be successful in living in accordance with its ideals, then, as the pasuk says in Yeshaya, all the nations would come, they would rush to see what are they doing. Let's be able to do the same things in our countries. So we don't have to actively proselytize. In fact, when you actively proselytize, it almost is as if you're trying to sell a bill of goods. Now, look what we're doing, it's great, and vote for me, and it'll be the contrary. If the values are solid and worth emulating, you don't have to sell them. They'll sell themselves. So we don't actively proselytize, but this is the ultimate objective. We function as Kohanim. But it's important to know that when we function as Kohanim, this doesn't mean that the ultimate goal is to obliterate the distinction between Jew and non-Jew. It doesn't mean that what we're praying for is, in the Messianic age, there should be just one homogenized human race. But even in Yemos Mashiach, even when all the nations are brought to the emes, to the truth, Klal Yisrael will still have a position of importance, presumably because we were the parties that suffered for so many hundreds of years and actually brought about the fulfillment of the divine plan. If you remember, in the Rosh and Kippur davening, this was an idea which is clearly made. After we pray for the entire world coming to recognize the Rebbeinu Shalom, what do we then say? Uvechein tein kavod lamecha, and thereby you will give honor, kavod, respect to your people. Meaning that when we pray for the advent of the Messianic age and all mankind recognizing God, we don't need to say all mankind will recognize God, but then Klal Yisrael will disappear. It's not like the healthcare system, where we're trying to obliterate the distinction between ill and healthy. Right? What would the ultimate goal be? To make everybody healthy, right? Once you make everybody healthy, then you won't need doctors or anybody, everyone is healthy. That's not the goal. The goal is, yes, we're bringing all mankind to the truth, but Klal Yisrael will still be something special. That's Mamleches Kohanim v'Goy Kadosh. But it's not Goy Kadosh and Mamleches Kohanim. It's not that first we become a holy nation and thereby we function as Kohanim. We function as Kohanim, but even after we fulfill our mission as Kohanim, as priests, we are still a Goy Kadosh. We still are a nation apart. We still are special. That distinction between Jew and non-Jew will not be obliterated even in the Messianic age. It's true that all mankind will be monotheistic and they will be moral and upright, but Klal Yisrael will still be a nation apart. And that's the covet, that's the respect, the honor that we will have even in the Messianic age.
What would be the point?
The point is because we will deserve it. That's the point, right? In other words, the
payback.
It's only just, right? Because you've been working for the cause. You, I don't mean you as an individual, but you as a nation, has been working for the cause for 3,000 years. So it's not that once you've achieved success, now, okay, forget it. We don't need you anymore. I mean, that would be like a person running for the presidency, and he has his loyal campaign workers, and they've sweated and toiled and worked and slaved to elect their man. And now that he's in office, he says, okay, don't need you anymore. So now the whole nation has voted for me. You can just say goodbye. No, we don't say that. There's still something special he feels for those people that are that were instrumental in his getting to where he is. Now that doesn't mean, we should buy into cronyism and, under the table deals and that kind of thing. But you get the idea. It's only fair that they should be rewarded for their having believed, even in the difficult times, and having worked to bring everyone to the universal recognition. So that's Mamlechus Kohanim B'Goy Kadosh. Now this is an amazing thing. Sukkot is followed by another holiday called Shmini Atzeres. And Shmini Atzeres, Chazal say, is a regular b'fnei atzma. Really, it's a different holiday. It's an amazing coincidence that it comes just after Sukkot. But it's not part of Sukkot. It's a separate holiday. And there are halachic consequences of this. For example, on the last day of Pesach, you don't say the bracha of Shechionu. You don't praise God for having brought us to this monumental day, because it really is not a separate holiday. It's really the conclusion of the 7 days of Pesach. So there's no Shechionu called for. But on Shemini Atzeres, you just say Shechionu. And the reason for that is because it's a separate holiday. It's a new holiday. Shemini Vegel B'Fnei Atzma, other consequences. That's why in the Shemona Esrei we don't say Chag HaSukkos, we say Yom HaShemini, Chag HaTzeres, or Atzeres, or Chag HaZeh. It's a different holiday. Rashi quotes the Medrash, which says that the idea behind Shmini Atzeres is God says like this. He says the entire week of Sukkot you brought korbanos for the 70 nations. Now bring a korban for yourselves that I can enjoy your company. And of course, as you would expect, even if you don't have a chumash in front of you and don't know it by heart, I would ask you, how many oxen do you think I brought on Shmini Atzeres? What's the answer? One, of course, right? Because that's Kineged, that corresponds to Klal Yisrael. The 70 corresponds to the 70 nations. The one par, the one bull of Shmini Atzeres corresponds to the Jewish people. And this is the idea that God says that even after you've successfully functioned as the Kaihanim, as the priests of the nations of the world, that's a very nice thing. I appreciate it very much. Now I want to spend time with you. I want to spend time with you. So that's what Shmini Atzeres is. Now, interestingly, Shmini Atzeres has evolved in ways that, well, let's put it this way. They certainly were foreseen by God, because God knows the future, but I think they were unforeseen by the Jewish people. The Shmini Atzeres has become transformed into Simchas Torah. Now keep in mind that we have 2 days. So we've turned the second day of Shmini Atzeres into Simchas Torah. Really, there's no such thing as Simchas Torah. The Torah never talks about Simchas Torah. The Torah talks about Yom HaShmini Atzeres Tiyah Lachem. That it's the 8th day is the day of Atzeres, the day of gathering together. But we complete the Torah on the second day of Shmini Atzeres, so we've given it its own name, Simchas Torah. In Eretz Yisrael, of course, there's only one day. So what do they call it? They call it Simchas Torah, but it's really Shmini Atzeres, right? But the point is,
how does Shmini Atzeres they don't
colloquially it's called Simchas Torah. Now, but how did that happen? How did it become Simchas Torah? Well, by an accident, by a very curious accident. See, the Gemara says like this. The Gemara says that what is the Kriyas HaTorah for Shmini Atzeres? What are you meant to lane on Shmini Atzeres? So the Mishnah says you lane the Parshas Moyados, the Parsha of Yom Tovim of Mishnah Torah. You lane the Parsha of Yom Tovim, which is in Sefer Devarim, which is in Parshas Re'eh. Parshas Re'eh, the end of the Parsha, talks about the Yom Tovim. That's where you lane. The first day of Sukkot, you lane the Parshas Moyadim Shabbateres Kehanim. You lane from Parshas Emor, which is the description of the Yom Tovim in the book of Vayikra. At the end, you lane the Parshas Moyados that are in Sefer Devarim, Parshas Re'eh. So the Gemara says, okay, that's when you have one day of Shmini Atzeres. When you have the second day of Shmini Atzeres, what do you lane on the second day? So the Gemara says, you lane the Zos HaBracha. You lane the blessings of Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? Why do you lane the blessings of Moshe Rabbeinu? So the Ran says, the reason you lane the blessings of Moshe Rabbeinu, because it's a nice thing to end the holiday with blessings. It has nothing to do with the fact you finished the Torah. It's a nice thing. You end up a holiday, you end up with blessings. Right? What do you want to end up with? Curses? You end up with a bracha. So you read Bezos bracha, read the blessings of Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Achrayim explain that, our custom to finish the Torah once a year was not always the universal practice. There was a time that there was a distinction between the custom of Bavel and the custom of Eretz Yisrael. In Bavel they finished the Torah once a year, in Eretz Yisrael they finished the Torah once every 3 years. The Gemara says the minig of Bnei Marav, the custom in Eretz Yisrael, was to finish the Torah once every 3 years. And yet, and for each weekly portion was only a third the size. So if you have a hard time learning the parsha, you think, no, there's something to be said for that, for doing the weekly portions in smaller pieces. But then they only finished Torah once every 3 years. And yet, every year, on the second day of Shmini Atzeres, they still would have read Bezos HaBracha. Because the reason you learn Bezos HaBracha has nothing to do with the fact that's when you finish the Torah. You read Bezos HaBracha, the Ram says, because it's blessings, it's a good thing. Now, but the universal practice nowadays is to finish the Torah once a year. So they figured, well, if we're reading Bezos HaBracha anyway, it's a perfect way of setting up the cycle that it should end on the Yontif that we're reading Bezos HaBracha anyway. So it became, the second day of Shmini Atzeres became the siyum of the Torah. And then inexplicably, in Eretz Yisrael, where it was not the minig to finish the Torah originally once a year, but when Eretz Yisrael embraced the minig of Bavel, they also began reading Bezos HaBracha on Shmini Atzeres, on their one day of Shmini Atzeres, even though that is keneged the Mishnah. It's against the halakha of the Mishnah, because the Mishnah says that on Shmini Atzeres you learn from Parshas Rei, the parsha of the Moedais. And so now Eretz Yisrael embraced the practice, copying Chutz La'aretz, to laying Bezos HaBracha on Shmini Atzeres, and that's what they do today. Today in Eretz Yisrael, Shmini Atzeres has become Simchas Torah, which is how that came to be is a mystery. But it came to be Simchas Torah. So in Chutz La'aretz, the second day of Shmini Atzeres in Eretz Yisrael, the entire Shmini Atzeres became Simchas Torah. So the question really is this: that why should Shmini Atzeres be a celebration of the Torah? So keep in mind the famous statement of Reb Sadia Gaon. Reb Sadia Gaon writes in the Sefer Munas V'Deis that our nation is only a nation by virtue of its Torah. That's what he writes, which means like this: if you take any nation in the world, the French nation, the English nation, the Russian nation, and so on and so forth, there are certain characteristics that define it. It may be ethnic and racial characteristics, it may be cultural characteristics, it may be cuisine, whatever it is. There are certain characteristics that define the national character. Because Klal Yisrael is very difficult to define Klal Yisrael in those ways. Whereas Jews belong to every ethnic group imaginable, every culture imaginable, every cuisine imaginable. What we think of Jewish food, right, is really only the cuisine of Eastern European Jews. Kishka, farfel, shalom, these things. Sephardic Jews wouldn't touch the stuff. And the truth is, maybe they're better off for it. Not much can be said for the nutritional or health benefits of the typical Eastern European diet. It was, they lived in countries where the winters were very long. Fresh vegetables weren't readily available. What did they have? They had meat and animal fat.
And roots.
And roots that could keep in storage for the entire winter. Carrots, potatoes, beets. And they developed a cuisine around those types of things that had flour in them. So you could, you have flour, you have eggs, you're keeping chickens, you can make luksh, you can make noodles. You make noodles, you can make noodles into a kugel. Take the flour with the eggs, make it into farfel. It's a cuisine which really is based on a very, very, very few ingredients which were available during the long winters. So what defines Klal Yisrael? What makes Klal Yisrael a nation? So Reb Sadia Gaon says that Klal Yisrael is only a nation by virtue of its Torah. That's what makes us a nation. There is no other characteristic that unites us except that we are the nation that is connected to the Torah. And if our conjecture is correct, that's what Shmini Atzeres is. Shmini Atzeres is God saying, okay, you functioned as priests for the 70 nations, that's very nice. Now you have to spend time with me. It's just the two of us. Rebbeinu Shalom and Klal Yisrael. So Klal Yisrael intuits that if we are celebrating not as representatives of the 70 nations, we're celebrating as Jews. Well, what is that which makes us Jews? It's the Torah. Therefore, there's no more appropriate time for the celebration of Torah. Even though, really, one could have thought, put aside everything you already know. If you were thinking, what would the most appropriate day be for the siyum, for the completion of the Torah?
Shavuos.
You think Shavuos? You think Shavuos? Well, the answer is no. But apparently not. Apparently it's really Shemini Atzeres, for the reasons we discussed. But this whole idea of Klal Yisrael serving as the priests and then having that extra day, which is impose your fear on all mankind, but after that, that's really the relationship of Sukkot and Shemini Atzeres. This is all a taste of the Achros Sayam. This is all a taste of the Messianic age. Because that's the ultimate Asif, that's the ultimate ingathering. So the Anane Kavod, the clouds of the Shekhinah resting on our forefathers in the Midbar, is only a taste of the future. So therefore, Sukkot, in a sense, is not so much a celebration of something in the past as it is an anticipation, if you will, of the future when history reaches its successful culmination. That's what Sukkot is. So Sukkot is really, it's retrospective in one sense. Yes, it does commemorate the Jews in the Midbar, the Yanai Kavod, but it's also prospective in a sense that it foreshadows and foretells the experience of Klal Yisrael in the Messianic age, where we function as the Mamlechas Kaihanim, the kingdom of priests. That's the first 7 days, and then the Goy Kadosh, which is of course Shemini Atzeres. Yes.
Could you comment a little bit on Hoshana Rabbah and the things that we do and its significance?
Hoshana Rabbah, on the simplest level, relates to a peripheral fact, which is Chazal tells us B'chak Nidarim Alamayim. On Rosh Hashanah we are judged for, on Sukkot we're judged for water. Now this is a very, very, very complicated thing, an extremely complicated thing. Now the Mishnah says in Rosh Hashanah that there are 4 dates of judgment. Ba'arba Prakim Eilam Gibon, 4 occasions the world is judged. Pesach, we're judged on grain. Shavuos, we're judged on fruits of the tree. Sukkot, we're judged on water. And Rosh Hashanah, people are judged. Now the Ram explains like this, that when you judge people, right, every individual person, let's give a marshal that illustrates it. There's a pie, it has to be sliced. Okay, so in Rosh Hashanah it's determined what percentage of the pie you're going to get. Okay, there are a lot of people in the world, there are billions of people, so your slice is going to be pretty thin, but it's a percentage of the pie. But when does it decide how big the pie is? Right? So that's the other 3 problems. In other words, Pesach is a determination of how big the grain pie is. Shavuos is how big the fruit pie is. Sukkot is how big the water pie is. Rosh Hashanah is a determination of what your percentage of the pie is. And therefore it's very important, you see, because the bigger the pie, the bigger your percentage will be. Let's say you're going to get,
now the bigger your
10,000 to 1%, right? But it depends how big the pie is. If the pie is bigger, then your percentage is going to be more valuable. Right. So the other 3 times are very, very important. Now, there is a problem, and I found Baruch Hashem that the Shagasari talks about this in the Sefer Gvura Sari, that there is a little bit of a problem, because it comes out that Rosh Hashanah is really first. let's say Rosh Hashanah, you were judged, and the water for the year is going to be determined on the Sukkot after that Rosh Hashanah. So the Shagasai says the only way to understand it is essentially that your percentage is established before the size of the pie is established, which sounds strange. But he says that's what you have to say. In other words, on Rosh Hashanah you're judged, and this is your percentage, and then the determination as to the size of the pie comes later, which is a little counterintuitive, because you would think that you should decide the size of the pie first and then decide the slices. But this is what it comes out. So therefore, Sukkot is a time of judgment, right, for water. Now, we are not farmers ourselves, so we are not conscious of water. But everything that we eat, everything we consume, is ultimately a function of water, right? If this is a year that Canada will be blessed with water, then your food prices will be lower, right? If it's a year of drought, then your food prices will be higher. So therefore, even you are affected by water. Okay, so that's the tradition of the Sukkot. So the prayers that we say, the Hoshanas we say over Sukkot, really prayers for salvation, really are in that judgment for water. That's the simple meaning. Hoshana Rabbah is the seal. It's the last day, the judgment of water. So the same way that Yom Kippur is the last day of the judgment for human beings, Hoshana Rabbah is the last day of the judgment for water. And therefore, Hoshana Rabbah has many of the trappings of Yom Kippur. The way that tefillos are conducted, and even the tunes, and the way the chazan dresses, and so on and so forth, are all reminiscent of Yom Kippur. In fact, you'll notice that the last piyut that we say at Ne'ilah, really comprised of 2 verses, before the last time we say Kel Melech, really are borrowed from the Hoshanas of Hoshana Rabbah. In other words, it's part of the, Rachem no Kala Das Yeshurun, Shari Shemayim Psach, Botzarcha Tov, Lanu Psach, etc. These come from the service for Hoshana Rabbah.
That's also why there's reference to the gates closing on Hoshana Rabbah.
Yeah, again, there are mystical interpretations that attach greater significance to Hoshana Rabbah, that it also has relevance to the judgment of people. But the simple interpretation, without any mystical overtones, is that it's the chasimus, the conclusion of the din of mayim, of water. And therefore, that's why it is critical. Again, as I said, we're not sensitive to water. But I think anyone who lives in Eretz Yisrael, right, is much more sensitive to the idea. This is news. The water level of the Kinneret. Which line is the water at? This is something that's going to have consequences for the whole country. I don't know if this is sufficiently emphasized in the press here. I assume that in Eretz Yisrael this is something which is very important. That beneath the surface, and all the negotiations, and all the whether Palestinian statehood or giving the Golan Heights back to Syria and so on and so forth, it's not only a question of security. It's not only security considerations. There are water considerations that are extremely, extremely important. In this, there are certain territories that if we would give back, even if we could address the security considerations, we have a very hard time addressing the water considerations. Right now we control at least, well, from Rishmi in an official sense, the flow of the Jordan. Right? Were we to cede West Bank territory back to the Palestinians, so we would lose control of the flow of the Jordan, which would affect the Dead Sea and the ecological consequences of this. I mean, it's a very, very, very complex issue, which I am not 1,000% up on, but I do know that these are very, very, very important issues.
That's one of the problems with Lebanon. They pulled out because that's where Jordan starts.
Yeah.
And still conflict there.
Yeah. But in any case, so this is the idea of Sukkot. So Sukkot really is, as we said, it's the culmination of the Shalosh Regalim in the sense that we have the Oviv, the sprouting, which is Pesach. We have the Kotzir, the immediate objective, which is the receiving of the Torah. We have Sukkot, which is the ultimate objective. So ultimate in two senses. Ultimate because the ultimate objective of receiving the Torah was the beginning of that relationship, which the Anani Kavod symbolized in the Midbar, but also it corresponds to the ultimate relationship, which is the Messianic age. I want to point out, in the last minutes that are remaining, that the truth is that what the Shalosh Regalim are on the national level, the Yomim Neroim are on the personal level. Or this cycle of Aviv, Kotzir, and Asif, of sprouting and harvesting and ingathering, on the personal level, on the individual level, really is what the Yom Neroim are all about. Rosh Hashanah, of course, is the Aviv of the individual. Rosh Hashanah is the sprouting of the individual. This is a new year. This is a beginning, fresh start. And we all feel that. We all feel that. That's really the idea of Rosh Hashanah. The idea of Rosh Hashanah is, in a sense, let's put the past year behind us. There's that tefillah that some say in Rosh Hashanah that Tichl Hashanah l'kol leiseha, let the past year and its curses end. Tachel Shana b'cheseh, let the new year and its blessings begin. But not only curses and blessings in terms of what happens to us, but even in the sense of making a new start, a fresh start, turning over a new leaf. We all understand that Rosh Hashanah is, on a personal level, our Aviv. This is our sprouting. This is our new beginning. The immediate objective of making that new start is to come to the cleansing, the kapara, which we achieve in Yom Kippur. Right? The idea of making a fresh start in Rosh Hashanah is not so that we can lose weight or do anything like that. No, that might be commendable. But the fresh start of Rosh Hashanah, the immediate objective is to come to the kapara, the cleansing of Yom Kippur. But here is the tragedy. The tragedy is that the 3-day-a-year Jews think it ends at Yom Kippur. Right? For them, Yom Kippur is the final objective, and religion is put to bed for another year. And that's really, really tragic, because Yom Kippur is only the immediate objective. It's not the ultimate objective. The ultimate objective exactly is Sukkot. And Sukkot is Man Simchaseinu, the time of our joy. This is when we celebrate with the Rebbeinu Shalom. And I think that if you really want to get a good lesson in Sukkot, you have to travel a little bit. Go to Eretz Yisrael and see what Sukkot is all about. Well, that's where it's at. Once you go there, you can come back here and you can have an inkling. If you've never been there for a Sukkot, you don't really know what it's all about. It's really, we are just going through the motions by comparison. It's really a time of joy, really a time of tremendous joy. And I think that, again, its joy is, for us, not bounds the agricultural cycle, because we are very far removed from the land, at least most of us. I remember years ago, I once was in the supermarket with my son Yaakov, and I was a big boy, 22, but then he was a little boy. And we're in the produce section, and I say, Yaakov says, you know where the fruit comes from? So he says, you mean like the factory where they make it? I said, no, that's not what I mean. People that live in industrial societies really think that things are made in factories. Right? They don't understand that things grow, and so we're divorced from the land. But I think for most of us, Sukkot is really it's the celebration that follows Yom Kippur. Whereas we've worked on ourselves, and we've prayed, and we've hopefully been engaged in the work of tshuva, and now we rejoice with the Rebbeinu Shalom. And I think the observances of Sukkot all relate to this. One thing is true about the spiritual life is that the spiritual life doesn't require many things, many goods for a person to be happy. Because happiness is not a function of what you own. Neil Postman, famous social commentator, blessed memory, made a point that television commercials really are modern myths. They are the embodiment of a religious tradition. What religion, though? The religion that believes that happiness is rooted in possession. That if you own certain things, you'll be a happier person. If you use the right laundry detergent, if you use the right soap, the right deodorant, if you drive the right car, you use the right tires, etc., you will be happy. And if you don't have the right laundry detergent, soap, deodorant, tires, beer, it's at your own peril. You are condemned to a life of misery. So the commercials have taught us that you must have this, and 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 the more you have is the key to a happy life. But the spiritual life really is a life where we understand that true happiness is not rooted in possessions. You don't need much to be happy. Happiness is really a state of mind. It's a state of being content with yourself, feeling that your life has purpose and has meaning. Of course you need some goods. Right? You're not going to be very happy if you're starving to death. But a lot of what we have, right, we could really do without. In the spiritual life, you don't need that much. And that's really what the Sukkah is all about. In other words, people take pride in their houses, in their homes, and they're beautifully furnished and decorated and everything. And yet, they go into the Sukkah, which is fairly bare bones, Home Depot decor. I have to mention, as an aside, I was talking to someone today, and I said, now I wonder, do the guys in Home Depot, do they know that like this week is special? So he says, he was talking to one of the guys who works in Home Depot, right? And the guy told him like this, I've heard so many ideas today, because everyone comes in with their Sukkah ideas, and they figure they'll try them on one of the Home Depot people. He says, I've heard so many ideas today. He says, even if one of them works, it'll be a revolution. He said. So they know what Sukkah is. But, and it's beautiful. Everyone is happy. Everyone is happy. Okay, you're going to say, okay, for a week you can live like that. But the truth is that it's something we have to know, that the spiritual life doesn't require the goods that we feel compelled to amass. And we can be happy with each other, or even in the Sukkah, which is very much exposed to the elements. And that really is the asif. That is the conclusion of Yom Kippur. That's the final culmination. That we can be happy. To be happy on Yom Kippur, you have to be an extraordinary person. Maybe most of us are. But the Torah still calls it torture. Ta'anus nashosechem. You should afflict yourselves on Yom Kippur. That means that if you are looking at your watch on Yom Kippur, wondering when is it going to be over, that is perfectly normal. You're not a malach, but you're a normal human being. A normal human being does at some point wonder, how much more do I have till I get to eat? But Sukkot is really when we, in a sense, find the happy medium, the perfect balance between being a malach and being a human being. Yom Kippur is, we go to the other extreme, and Sukkot we find the perfect medium. The rest of the year is our slipping back into materialism, and that requires another corrective next Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and next Sukkot. But Sukkot is the ideal time. That's the time of true joy. It's very interesting that the entire year in the Beis Hamikdash, the liquid offering that was offered on the Mizbeach was comprised of wine. The Nisuch HaYayin was wine. And the Gemara says that wine has the power to arouse joy. Ein oimrim shir el hayayin. You only sing the songs of praise in the presence of wine. Now, it doesn't mean you have to drink the wine. No, if you have a festive occasion, there's a bottle of wine on the table, it raises it to a level of joy, even if you don't open the bottle. But it's a festive occasion. So when you pour wine on the altar, it's a festive occasion. It calls for a song. Even though you're not drinking that wine, the altar is drinking the wine, but it's already a festive occasion. On Sukkot, you have the Nisuch HaMayim. You pour water. Water. Plain water. Not even bottled water. Plain water. So the question is, what is the idea? I once saw in a sefer in the Shuri Das from Blaimir Bloch says, because at the time of true joy, you don't need the artificial spark of wine. Even water is joyous. Plain water is joy. And that's really what Sukkot is. It's a time of joy. And because we've lived as Malachim on Yom Kippur, and now we're settling to the perfect balance of our angelic side, or as Lincoln put it, the better angels of our nature, and the fact that we are human beings and have physical needs. We find a perfect balance. Now, perfect balance, surprisingly, is not where we think it should be. In other words, it's an existence which has very, very few demands. So needless to say, for everyone should be very, very happy Sukkot, and really spend as much time as you can in the Sukkah. And just enjoy it. Enjoy all the mitzvahs. Enjoy Simchas Torah. Enjoy the experience, and hopefully it'll be a very, very enlightening and enjoyable experience. It should be a very happy Yom Tov.